It is my honor to support Goodwin Liu, a Californian and a brilliant Californian who has been nominated by the President to the United States Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And what a fine nomination this is. And I want to thank the President for his belief in Goodwin and his, I think, amazing perception that this is a young man, and he's young. He's about 40. This is a young man who is just exceptional, is a perfect example of the American dream, and someone who has worked so hard to put him into this position where he was nominated for this great honor. I want to show folks a picture of Goodwin. He's a very, very special and talented person. And he's had a long struggle with this nomination, which we will talk about. I also want to thank, of course, Chairman Leahy for working hard to bring this nomination to the Senate floor, and Senator Feinstein, my colleague, for her hard work in the committee and her leadership in helping to shepherd this nomination in the Senate. This vote is not only historic, because Goodwin will make history if he gets this vote. This vote is long overdue. First, let me talk about why it's historic. It's historic because if we get the 51 votes that we need today, Professor Liu will be one of only 2 Asian Americans currently serving as a federal appellate judge in the United States. There is currently only 1 Asian American among the 160 active judges on the Federal Court of Appeals, and there is no active Asian American judge on the Ninth Circuit, which has jurisdiction over an area that is home to more than 40% of our nation's Asian American population. Let me repeat that. There is no active Asian American judge on the Ninth Circuit, which has jurisdiction over an area that is home to more than 40% of our nation's Asian American population. Now, the beauty of our great nation, one of the beauties, is our great diversity. America is great because we are representative of so many faiths and so many ethnic backgrounds. And we know that all of our institutions, whether it's right here in the Senate or anywhere, all of our institutions do better when they have a diversity of views and diversity around them. And clearly, when someone as brilliant as Goodwin gets this nomination, we should be so proud in this body. We should be joining hands over party lines. We should be pleased that our court would have such a brilliant member. Now, Professor Liu was originally nominated in February 2010 for a judicial emergency seat, one that's been vacant since January 2009. So we've had a judicial emergency, and yet we've had a hard time getting this vote to the floor. Now, Chief Justice Roberts called on senators not to play politics with our nominees. He warned that delays in filling vacancies has created acute difficulties in some judicial districts. That's a quote. Undoubtedly, the Ninth Circuit certainly is one of the jurisdictions the Chief Justice referred to, because the Ninth Circuit is the nation's largest and busiest appellate court in the country, accounting for over 20% of all new appellate cases in the country, according to court statistics. Now, I sat and I heard Senator Cardin, I thought, just did a beautiful job of laying out why he's supporting Goodwin Liu, but I also heard some other comments that didn't connect to Goodwin Liu. I heard comments that just didn't fit what Goodwin Liu has said about his role as a judge. And so I wanted to put up a couple of the quotes directly from Professor Liu and what he said about his role as a judge. He said, "I think the role of the judge is to be an impartial, objective, and neutral arbiter of specific cases and controversies that come before him or her. And the way that that process works is through absolute fidelity to the applicable precedents and the language of the laws, statutes, regulations that are at issue in the case. Another statement by Professor Liu I wanted to share with you. He said, "If I were fortunate enough to be confirmed in this process, it would not be my role to bring any particular theory of constitutional interpretation to the job of an intermediate appellate judge. The duty of a circuit judge is to faithfully follow the Supreme Court's instructions on matters of constitutional interpretation, not any particular theory." And so that is exactly what I would do, is I would apply the applicable precedents to the facts of each case. Couldn't be clearer. So if you hear any colleague of mine saying something else about how Professor Liu views the role of a judge in this particular appellate area, just refer them to these quotes. Professor Liu has sat before the Senate Judiciary Committee twice for more than 5 hours. 5 hours answering any and all questions posed to him during the hearings. He has also answered numerous written questions from committee members. He has been voted out of the Judiciary Committee 3 times. And I just ask the American people, as they tune into this debate, and they may not be familiar with, the confirmation process, if they think it is fair for someone like Professor Liu, and we'll put his picture back up, so we personalize this. This young man, this husband, this father, this teacher, to have to sit for all those hours and then finally be brought to the floor after the 3rd time he's voted it. That's why I really praise Senator Leahy for doing this again. But sometimes there are reasons that you go back and back and back. There are reasons of fairness and justice, and because we don't want to miss an opportunity to put someone like Goodwin, Professor Liu, on the bench. Now, I will tell you, there have been 12 months of attacks on Goodwin Liu. Misrepresentations, unfounded distortions of his record, and I want the American people to know this. Politics is tough, and I could tell you, running 4 times for the Senate, it's tough, it's brutal, it's ugly, but there is no reason to turn that venom on a nominee like this. And it is offensive to me. Through it all, Professor Liu could have said, you know what, I can't take this, I don't need this, my kids don't need this, my family doesn't need this. But he showed courage and character and dignity. I was so pleased when President Obama nominated Goodwin Liu to serve on the U.S. Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, because Goodwin Liu is considered one of the brightest legal scholars, not just in California, but in the nation. He is a respected authority on constitutional law. At UC Berkeley's Bolt Hall School of Law, where he's an associate dean and a professor, he is admired widely for his writings and his devotion to his students. To Professor Liu, if you are watching these proceedings, I'm proud of you. And to Professor Liu's wife, Anne, and his 2 small children, Violet and Emmett, I say thank you for your patience and your unyielding support, and you should be so proud of your dad. And let me tell you a little bit about Goodwin Liu's background. He was born in Augusta, Georgia, the son of Taiwanese immigrants who came to this country to practice medicine in underserved areas. In 1977, they moved to Sacramento, where his parents were primary care physicians for over 20 years. In Goodwin, his parents instilled both perseverance and a strong work ethic, even leaving math problems on the kitchen table every day of the summer to supplement his schoolwork. As a high school student, he pulled all-nighters studying the dictionary to expand his vocabulary and raise his SAT scores. His hard work paid off, propelling him to Stanford University, where he graduated Phi Beta Kappa, and to Oxford University, where he was a Rhodes Scholar. So I say to my colleagues on the other side who often say it ought to be, the results of your life that count. It ought to be your record that counts. It ought to be your qualifications that count. Stanford University, Phi Beta Kappa. Oxford University, Rhodes Scholar. Liu's experience at Stanford and Oxford in student government as a summer school teacher for low-income youth, co-directing a K-12 youth education conference, and studying philosophy encouraged him to pursue the law and public service. In fact, Liu spent the next 2 years at the Corporation for National Service, helping to launch the groundbreaking AmeriCorps program. He led the agency's effort to build community service programs at colleges and universities across the country. He traveled to over 30 states to encourage service among students. The spark of public service and the law clearly ignited, and Liu then went on to attend Yale Law School. His stellar record of achievement continued at Yale, where Liu, along with a classmate, won the prize for the best team argument in the moot court competition. Several of his papers won awards, and he earned prestigious clerkships on both the Court of Appeals and the Supreme Court. What more does anyone want from a nominee? I can't even imagine, frankly, even matching this. In between the clerkships, Liu again chose public service, working at the U.S. Department of Education, helping to implement a congressional appropriation to help turn around low-performing schools. Former South Carolina Governor Richard Riley, who was Secretary of Education at the time, called Liu a go-to person, his words, for important projects and complex issues because of Liu's ability to see the big picture while also mastering the details of legal and policy problems. Now, what else do you want in a judge? An ability to see the big picture while also mastering the details of legal and policy problems. That's a quote from former South Carolina Governor Richard Riley. After completing his Supreme Court clerkship, Liu joined the litigation practice at Old Melveny and Myers, working on a wide range of business matters. So there he was then in private practice. So you have a person who is, worked in government, in private practice, in education. He earned high praise from his peers, including Walter Dellinger, chair of O'Melveny's appellate practice, who said, quote, Liu is widely respected in law practice for his superb legal ability, his sound judgment, and his warm collegiality, unquote. Then Liu joined the faculty at UC Berkeley's Bolt Hall in 2003, and he quickly established himself as an outstanding teacher, as well as a constitutional law and education law and policy expert. Think about this in a young life. This is a young life. All these experiences, including raising a family. In the classroom, Liu is popular. He's well regarded. His introductory constitutional law course is consistently one of the most oversubscribed at Bolt. They want to hear him. They want to be in his presence to understand how the Constitution works and why this country is so special. In 2009, Liu received UC Berkeley's Distinguished Teaching Award. the university's most prestigious Teaching Excellence Award. He was selected by that year's graduating class to be commencement speaker. Students often remark on Liu's efforts to illustrate the impact of the law on everyday life. As anyone who's taken his con law class knows, to demonstrate the principle, Liu uses a wedding photo that shows him and his new bride, Anne O'Leary, the Irish-American daughter of a social worker and union leader from Orono, Maine. The two married in Virginia, a state that had restricted interracial marriage until the Supreme Court invalidated the provision in the landmark 1967 case Loving versus Virginia. Berkeley Law School Dean Christopher Edley describes Professor Liu this way: Goodwin Liu is an outstanding teacher, a brilliant scholar, and an exceptional public servant, unquote. Professor Liu is widely respected and has tremendous support across the legal spectrum and from both sides of the political aisle. I want to read you what Ken Starr has said about Goodwin Liu. Remember Ken Starr, the former Whitewater prosecutor. This is what he says. In our view, and he wrote this with Professor Amar in an op-ed piece that ran, in our view, the traits that should weigh most heavily in the evaluation of an extraordinarily qualified nominee such as Goodwin are professional integrity and the ability to discharge faithfully an abiding duty to follow the law. Because Goodwin possesses those qualities to the highest degree, we are confident that he will serve on the Court of Appeals not only fairly and competently, but with great distinction. We support and we urge his speedy confirmation. I want to point out to my Republican friends, Ken Starr is one of your heroes. Come on. Listen to what he says about Goodwin Liu. And don't come to the floor and say things about Goodwin that aren't so. Please, come to your senses about Goodwin Liu. And let's see, there's another supporter I wanted to talk about too. And this is former Bush administration counsel Richard Painter. I've done my share of vetting and fighting the confirmation wars. I didn't know much about Liu before his nomination, but I became intrigued by the attention the nomination generated, and I wondered if his Republican critics were deploying the same tactics Democrats use to attack Republican nominees. They were. If anything, the attacks on Liu have been even more unfair. Based on my own review of his record, I believe it's not a close question that Liu is an outstanding nominee whose views fall well within the legal mainstream. That conclusion is shared by leading conservatives who are familiar with Liu's record, and that's Richard Painter, former Bush administration counsel. Let's put his picture back up. We even have a quote from Clint Bolick of the Goldwater Institute, one of the most conservative institutes. They endorsed Liu. This is what they said: because of his fresh, independent thinking and his intellectual honesty, as well as his scholarly credentials and experience to serve with distinction on this important court. If that's not enough for my Republican friends, I got some more. I've got former Republican Congressman Bob Barr. He offered praise of Professor Liu's commitment to the Constitution and to a fair criminal justice system. Barr also noted that Liu's views are shared by many scholars, lawyers, public officials from across the spectrum. And Tom Campbell of California, a former Republican congressman, someone who actually attempted to run against me a couple of times for the Senate, he wrote, Goodwin will bring scholarly distinction and a strong reputation for integrity, fair-mindedness, and collegiality to the Ninth Circuit. Reflecting on Liu's many years of work in serving the public interest, Campbell said, I'm not surprised that Liu has again been called to public service. Yes, he's been called to public service. He's been nominated, but he won't be able to continue his extraordinary work unless we get 51 votes here. And I know there's some letter that's circulating that attacks Goodwin Liu again. And I hope that my colleagues will read not what I'm saying, but what leading Republicans are saying about how talented Goodwin Liu is. Every single thing the man has done has turned to gold. Every single thing he's done. Everything he does, he's best at. He's best at. Why would we lose this opportunity for the American people to have him serve them in this important capacity? I ask that rhetorically. I can't imagine why anyone would vote no. Now, here's another one. Professor Liu has even drawn praise from Brian Jones, who served as the general counsel at the Department of Education after Liu's tenure there. And this Brian Jones, who was the general counsel at the Department of Education under George Bush, this is what he said. During 2001 and 2002, and even after he became a law professor in 2003, Goodwin volunteered his time and expertise on several occasions to help me and my staff sort through legal issues that he worked on during the previous administration. In those interactions, Goodwin's efforts were models of bipartisan cooperation. He brought useful knowledge and careful lawyerly perspectives that helped our administration achieve its goals. But I am convinced, based on his record and my own experiences with him, that he is a thoughtful, fair-minded, and well-qualified to be an appellate judge. I don't know why the Republicans filibustered this nomination. I don't know why they filibustered this. I don't understand it. Let's look at some of the organizations that back Goodwin. Of course, in the Asian American community, they are so proud, as they should be, as I am, because Goodwin's a Californian by choice. In an op-ed published today, former Secretary Norm Mineta, the first Asian Pacific American member of the President's cabinet, and that's the Bush cabinet, Mineta. He wrote that Professor Liu is an extremely well-qualified nominee who has the intellectual capacity, experience, temperament, and integrity to be an excellent jurist. And Mineta went on to warn, quote, if Liu is not confirmed, Asian Pacific Americans may be left with the impression that there continues to be a glass ceiling blocking Asian Pacific Americans from top-level leadership positions, regardless of their qualifications. Let me say that again. Norm Mineta, anyone who knows him, knows what a wonderful human being he is. George W. Bush chose Norm Mineta, Norm's a Democrat, to be the Secretary of Transportation. And Norm Mineta says, because Professor Liu is so qualified, and I've gone through it, and has so much intellectual capacity, such great experience, such great temperament, and so much integrity, that he warns, quote, if Liu is not confirmed, Asian Pacific Americans may be left with the impression that there continues to be a glass ceiling blocking Asian Pacific Americans from top-level leadership positions, regardless of their qualifications, unquote. We have a quote from the Committee of 100, a national nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization that addresses Sino-U.S. relations affecting the Chinese-American community. They wrote, Liu's ascension to the bench would signal that talented people of all backgrounds are integral to our justice system. You know, what we do here matters. It matters who we send to these important positions. We have someone here who will break down barriers, but you know what? That wouldn't be enough. He's got to be great. He's got to be outstanding. and he's all those things. And yet, we're very nervous about getting 51 votes. We're very nervous that politics is being played. We don't know what's going to happen at the end of the day. That's why I'm taking this time. I'm taking this time because I want my colleagues to know if they cast an aye vote, it should bring a smile to their face. They should feel good in their heart and their mind because they'd be doing the right thing. 25 prominent Asian Pacific Americans who serve as general counsel to Fortune 1000 companies and other large companies wrote, Professor Liu has earned praise from conservatives and progressives alike for a sense of fairness, open-mindedness, and integrity. His intellect and qualifications are beyond dispute. Indeed, Professor Liu has been rated unanimously well qualified by the American Bar Association. And they go on, it is worth noting that Professor Liu would become the only Asian Pacific American active appellate court judge in the Ninth Circuit and only the second Asian Pacific American active appellate court judge nationwide. And given the large number of Asian Pacific Americans in California, Hawaii, and other states covered by the Ninth Circuit, and I said, Madam President, before that I think it's 40% of Asian Americans live in this particular area that the court covers. We know that the lack of an Asian Pacific American judge in this circuit is striking. And they continue, we feel Professor Liu would serve our country well and with distinction. Professor Liu has drawn law enforcement support, including the California Correctional Peace Officers Association, the National Asian Peace Officers Association, which noted that Professor Liu has earned the respect of its members and the large audience of the law enforcement community. David Lum, the president of National Asian Peace Officers Association, went on to compliment Liu as, quote, a person of integrity, dedication, passion, enthusiasm, and law and order. Liu has received support from the business community, including from the prominent business executives with whom Liu served on the Stanford University Board of Trustees with. In a letter of support, Liu's fellow trustees wrote the following. Across a wide range of complex issues, Goodwin routinely asks thoughtful and incisive questions. He is good at thinking independently and zeroing in on important issues that need attention. Even in a room full of highly accomplished leaders, Goodwin is impressive. He is insightful, constructive, and he's a good listener. He possesses a remarkably even temperament. His demeanor is unfailingly respectful and open-minded, never dogmatic or inflexible. Given these qualities, it was no surprise that he was asked to chair the board's Special Committee on Investment Responsibility after serving just 1 year of his 5-year term. Again and again, there's a thread running through this man's life at 40. That's how old he is, 40. Is that right? That's right. 40 years old. Everything this man has done, this young man has been unbelievably, I want to say, unimaginable at his age that he has done all he has done. His strengths are what we expect in a judge. Objectivity, independence, collegiality. This is what the Stanford trustees say. Respect for differing views, sound judgment. Goodwin possesses these qualities on top of the brilliant legal acumen that's well established by his professional record and the judgment of those most familiar with his scholarly work. I'll tell you, it goes on and on. The president of Stanford University, along with 2 presidents emeritus, wrote to endorse Liu's nomination. They said he's epitomized the goal of Stanford founders, which was to promote the public welfare by exercising an influence on behalf of humanity and on behalf of civilization, teaching the blessings of liberty regulated by law with inculcating reverence for the great principles of government as derived from the inalienable rights of man to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. This eloquence that is coming out of people's lips about Goodwin. Honestly, I've stood here before you many times, Madam President, and I've spoken in behalf of many nominees. I, honest to God, don't think I've ever had a situation where the eloquence and the passion of the supporters has come through as it has here for this young man. He's a blessing, honestly. And I feel at this moment we need to back him, all of us, and bring this country together around someone who epitomizes the American dream. I want to speak about, as I wind down, newspapers across the country who have weighed in to support Liu's nomination. The Washington Post remarked, Mr. Liu has sterling credentials that earned him the highest rating from the Bar Association. No allegations of impropriety to disqualify him from serving. The brilliant professor, they call him, who just turned 40 in October, testified he would not allow his academic musings to interfere with the duties of a lower court judge to follow precedent. And they write he should be confirmed and given the opportunity to demonstrate that he can do that. The Sacramento Bee noted that Liu would add luster to any court, and the Los Angeles Times joined the New York Times in endorsing his confirmation. So we've heard from Professor Liu when I opened, and I think I'm going to close by saying this. When we ask people in this country to give back to this nation, and they step up to the plate, and they want to give their talent to this nation, and they are supremely qualified, and they bring with them mainstream views, mainstream endorsements, bipartisan endorsements from the progressive community to Kenneth Starr. For goodness sakes, give this man an up or down vote. And don't say that you believe that judges deserve an up and down vote when you're in the majority and suddenly now say, well, they don't deserve it now. So I hope we'll see the 60 votes for cloture and then the 51 votes for confirmation. And I'm just privileged to have had this opportunity to share the story of Professor Goodwin Liu with my colleagues. Thank you.